This video is brought to you by Devout Decals, makers of reusable Catholic art for your home altar, your bedroom, and your home classroom.
Are you afraid of being labeled as schismatic by the powers that be in Rome? Are you afraid of the power of excommunication being leveled upon you by Francis or a subsidiary of his? Are you afraid of what the obvious heretics in the church think of you, or what they will do to you ecclesiastically? Are you afraid of what the world will say if you cling to tradition and resist the revolution in the church? These are questions that are important for us to answer right now. Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano has paid the price for this. He has been, quote-unquote, excommunicated, incurring automatic excommunication for denying the validity of Vatican II. Weirdly, his claims, they initially charged him with also for doubting the validity of Pope Francis's claim to the papal throne. Weirdly, they decided not to investigate that further. One has to wonder why. I don't think that's a coincidence. Today I have for you an open letter written from some laity to Archbishop Viganò, thanking him for his leadership and his willingness to sacrifice. These days, since his excommunication, every time I bring to you a Vigano message, there are people who get very upset about it. This is why I ask, are you afraid of what they will do? I do expect at some point, if things continue as they are, the Vatican will come after the lay voices, probably through their bishops. It's worth noting that many traditional commentators have heard, either directly or from very trustworthy secondhand sources, that there are bishops who pay attention to us. Maybe they don't agree with most or even half of what we say, but they have no intention of coming after us either, because broadly speaking, they're on the same page. Rest assured in that, but I do expect Rome to come after us at some point, as well as those good bishops who quietly resist in their own way. Please pray for your bishop, as Catholics were commanded to. Anyway, here's the open letter to Archbishop Viganò from concerned laity. Your Excellency, allow me to thank you for your courageous defense of the faith at a time when the Church seems to be living out the final moments of its long passion. In reality, you are doing nothing other than what a shepherd of the Church should do, protecting the faith and morals of the flock entrusted to you, and denouncing the wolves and mercenaries who divert souls from their ultimate end, which is heaven. It's a pity that when there aren't a few Nicodemites timidly defending a few truths in the conciliar church, we, quote, witness the silence of most prelates, a clear sign of their complicity in the church's self-destruction. Thank you, too, for your reference to Monsignor Lefebvre, for it is true to say that he was a beacon of light in the years following the Second Vatican Council, which Cardinal Swendens once described as 1789 in the church. In view of the iniquitous and derisory actions that now weigh upon you, it seems appropriate to recall that Monsignor Lefebvre, after the coronations of 1988, declared that it was, quote, a strict duty for every priest who wishes to remain Catholic to separate himself from this conciliar church, as long as it does not recover the tradition of the magisterium of the church and of the Catholic faith. And time, in the 30 years since Archbishop Lefebvre's death, has indeed shown that on the one hand, the conciliar monster has continued to grow, revealing its true face, and on the other, that those who have been able to keep the faith are essentially those who have upheld the wise counsel of the Iron Bishop. Alas, a number of traditional groups, in particular the SSPX, have lost the spirit of their founder, and in their naivety, or blindness, have wanted to join the conciliar church for fear of being seen as, quote, schismatic in the eyes of the world, forgetting that the Christian must seek to position himself in the truth by first seeing God or in relation to God. Finally, I would like to thank you for the clarifications you have provided concerning the legitimacy and validity of, quote-unquote, Pope Francis. For what helps the intelligent to see the truth are above all arguments of reason. I'm thinking in particular of the vice of consent that you develop in your publications in order to be able to provide elements of an answer to the mystery of iniquity that we've been facing for years. How did the man who is supposed to be the head of Christianity become the pontiff of liberalism and the promoter of stonecutter ideals in our poor apostate world? Or rather, how did a notorious heretic come to sit on the throne of Peter, so that, disguised as a sheep, he could deceive Christendom? A number of bona fide traditionalists lack credibility, I think, when they use sentimental arguments such as The Pope wore a clown's nose, and this is scandalous as has never happened before, so he can't be Pope, etc., while others rely on apparitions or pseudo-apparitions, which, although some may be true, seem insufficient to arrive at the assertion that Rome is indeed ruled by an anti-pope. In any case, I believe, but this is simply a personal opinion, that the conciliar church is the woman of the night of the apocalypse as described in chapter 17, and that Jorge Mario Bergoglio, or Francis, is probably the false prophet of the apocalypse, i.e. a false interpreter of God, not to be confused with the Antichrist, who, as the same sacred text says in chapter 13, leads the inhabitants of the earth to worship the first beast, which is atheistic worldwide integration, Satan's multi-headed monster. Finally, I pray that His Excellency will continue to fight the good fight of faith, as St. Paul says, defending the Church's unchanging doctrine and thwarting the many traps set by Christ's enemies. Crosses and trials are part of the life of the true apostles of Christ. God will reward you if you persevere. Please believe in my attachment to eternal Rome, mistress of wisdom and truth. Cristo et Maria, signed F.B., faithful of the Catholic Church. Does that echo your feelings towards Vigano? Do you find him to be just dangerous and unhinged? I'm curious what you have to say. I find it interesting that he calls out some traditionalist commentators who either are too attached to prophecy and that kind of thing, and a few come to mind, maybe perhaps even I come to mind in the minds of some, or those who are unwilling to call a spade a spade. Personally, again, for me, this is an issue of authority. At some point, the hierarchy will have to act. And it probably won't be until after Francis is gone. It should be clear by now that if any living prelate or groups of prelates were going to act, it would have been after Amoris Laetitia, or it would have been after Pachamama. Those were such gigantic happenings in the church. Huge events. Open idolatry of a pagan idol. And just clear rejection of church's teaching on communion for the divorced and civilly remarried. That if they were going to act, they would have. Maybe after Fiducia Supplicans. Maybe. But it's too late. They haven't acted yet. They write the occasional letters. They say some things. But they haven't acted. In fact, weirdly, you may have noticed they don't present as many letters from these bishops as they used to. It's because they don't write as many as they used to. I think after the events surrounding Cardinal Burke, most of them decided to keep their head down, hoping that all the reports that Francis isn't going to be here for much longer are true, putting their bet on a new pope coming soon. Francis may be around for quite a while yet. What are the limits of waiting for the hierarchy to act? I don't know that the answer to that is. Some have said that they have no qualms about publicly declaring Pope Francis to be an anti-pope. I won't chastise any of them for it. I think there's a brave stance to take, actually. It's a lot of courage to place yourself in a position where you could be targeted by your bishop for excommunication. I think the issue is more complicated than most realize. I want to know what your thoughts are in the comments, though. I think Vigano has gone way too far and that this layperson is just following essentially a spiritual Pied Piper. You think Vigano is a saint for our time? Think somewhere in between? Let me know in the comments what you think about this. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly helps. So does sharing this on social media. That helps too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.